The day before the wedding, my boyfriend set fire to our wedding room. Amid the raging flames, he looped, "Lena, without you, what have all these years of effort been for? Why? Why?" Lin Xiao was his ex-girlfriend, who abandoned him and left the country alone when he failed in his business venture years ago. Later, I stayed by his side as he tried to rebuild his life, and he would often mention that Lin Xiao was the person he hated most in his life. But just 3 days ago, news of Lin Xiao's death came from abroad. At the time, we were trying on wedding dresses, and I saw Zhou Ethan suddenly freeze in place, his eyes welling up with tears. Naively, I thought he was moved by me putting the wedding dress on him, but I didn't realize his tears weren't for me at all. The fire spread too quickly. I covered my abdomen and screamed for help, but in the last second before I was choked unconscious by the thick smoke, Zhou Ethan didn't look at me once. When I opened my eyes again, I was back in the university classroom. Facing Zhou Ethan's entrepreneurial invitation this time, I said, "Get out." Later, he knelt at my feet, tears streaming down his face, and said, "Ava, whether in this life or the next, I love only you. Look at me, please." At the interview with outstanding entrepreneurs in Qingmu City, when Zhou Ethan was asked who he was most grateful to along his journey, he silently turned his gaze toward me off-screen. "I do have someone I need to thank. She accompanied me through the toughest early days of entrepreneurship. When I gave up on myself, she didn't give up on me. She is my partner and my girlfriend, Ava." Zhou Ethan pushed through the crowd and pulled me into the frame. This was a live broadcast, and the staff were caught off guard. Fortunately, the reporter was experienced and quickly adjusted the situation, allowing the broadcast to continue. The sudden change caught me off guard, but the serious look in Ethan's eyes from last week still warmed my heart. Zhou Ethan and I have been together for over 5 years, starting with nothing, enduring cold shoulders while seeking investment every day, to now achieving entrepreneurial success. The hardships and struggles along the way are too numerous to describe. Countless times, the two of us pooled our money to pay the rent, with the last few dollars only enough for a box of the cheapest instant noodles. The winters in Qingmu City were especially harsh due to poverty. After running around all day, the two of us would huddle together over a bowl of instant noodles, arguing over the only egg we had. Back then, Ethan always promised to buy me the biggest house, take me to the best restaurants, and make me the happiest person in the world. Love conquers all, and back then, I truly didn't feel how hard it was. But now, as Zhou Ethan holds my hand tightly and recalls the hardships of the past, I can't help but shed tears. "Ava, marry me." Zhou Ethan kneels before me on one knee, pulling out a diamond ring from his pocket. His once tall figure now kneels before me, his clear eyes fixed only on me. Amidst the applause, we embraced each other, and the news of our engagement spread across the internet. After the live stream ended, my heart was still pounding. I playfully scolded him, "Why didn't you tell me beforehand? You scared me to death." Zhou Ethan wrapped his arms around me, his eyes filled with laughter, and said, "Silly, who asks for someone's hand in marriage and gives them a heads up? What if you had prepared something and hesitated? I'm telling you, this life and the next, you're mine, and there's no escaping it." Wedding preparations were quickly put into motion. Zhou Ethan was too busy with work, so I had to handle most of the details. Every time I asked him for his input, he simply said, "The best." Decorating the wedding room, booking the hotel, finalizing the guest list, choosing the wedding dress and attire, arranging the drinks and favors. One by one, everything was carried out smoothly and efficiently. Finally, 3 days before the wedding, I dragged Zhou Ethan to try on the final makeup for the big day. Standing at the makeup table, the moment I put on the white veil, I finally felt like I was really getting married. "Miss Ava, you're so lucky. Your love story with Mr. Ethan is just like a romance novel. I'm just an NPC in this world. Yeah, you and Mr. Ethan are so perfect together. Wait, should I say you're the talented one and he's the handsome one? Haha, whatever, you're both talented and good-looking." As the staff joked around, the makeup and styling were finally complete. I stood on the round fitting platform eagerly anticipating Zhou Ethan's reaction. After all, I'd seen it in countless movie scenes, the male lead tearing up upon seeing his beloved in a wedding dress. Though Joe Ethan isn't an emotional person, which woman doesn't hope for her beloved's reaction? The white curtain slowly parted, and I saw Joe Ethan standing before me in a suit. His body was stiff, his eyes brimming with tears, and the muscles around his mouth trembled slightly from excitement. Although Joe Ethan's reaction was a bit too intense, beyond my expectations, my heart was filled with sweet satisfaction. After being together for so long, especially as work partners, I often felt that there was a lack of passion between us. But seeing his reaction now, I felt reassured that I had overthought it. Wow, the bride is so beautiful she's left the groom speechless. Yes, Mr. Ethan is even crying. The staff's words snapped Joe Ethan back to reality. I blushed and asked, Ethan, do you think I look nice? Joe Ethan looked at me in surprise, then quickly removed the tie from his neck and said impatiently, Sorry, Ava, I have something to take care of. He then hurriedly left the scene. I stood there dumbfounded, not understanding what had happened, until my phone kept lighting up. I picked it up and saw that the long-dormant university group was buzzing with discussions about one name, Lin Xia. Everyone was forwarding an obituary. Lena's classmates were tragically killed in a shooting in the United States early yesterday morning. Lin Xia? No way, is that true? Oh my god, I can't believe Campus Belle could. Yeah, I remember Lin Xia was the prettiest girl in our class, so kind-hearted, and back then she and Ethan the genius were the perfect couple. Hey, let's not bring up the past. Joe Ethan and Ava are getting married. Didn't you receive the invitation? Because my name was mentioned, the group fell into a brief awkward silence. I turned off my phone and sat on the sofa, feeling drained. In pursuit of a perfect look, the wedding dress was so tight it was hard to breathe. Lin Xia is dead. Lin Xia was Joe Ethan's first love. They had a passionate romance in college. The love story between the beautiful campus queen and the cold-hearted genius is still talked about among classmates. However, in their senior year, Joe Ethan's startup failed, and Lin Xia abandoned him to go abroad alone. At that time, I was just his business partner, watching him self-destruct and fall into despair. I believed in his project and his talent, so I kept encouraging him to get back on his feet and helped him through the toughest times. Later, after we started dating, a friend mentioned Lin Xia out of the blue, and Joe Ethan slammed his cup down and said, I was blind for not seeing she was a materialistic gold digger. Don't mention her in front of me again. My girlfriend now is Ava. Joe Ethan's reaction left me with no doubt about his hatred for Lin Xia, and besides, he hadn't contacted her in all these years. I thought Lin Xia, as his first love, might still occupy a corner of his heart. After all, who hasn't experienced heartbreak in adulthood? But now it seems that Lin Xia occupies far more than just a corner. Joe Ethan's reaction just now has made it clear how much he cares. Looking at myself in the mirror, curled up on the sofa in a dejected state, my heart felt bitter. I didn't know whether to feel sad or relieved. Sad because Joe Ethan still loved Lin Xia. Relieved because our wedding hadn't taken place yet. I gently stroked my abdomen and finally couldn't hold back my tears. I was pregnant, and I had planned to surprise Joe Ethan on our wedding day. Now it seemed there was no need for that. After leaving the bridal shop, I returned home alone in a daze, looking at the beautifully decorated wedding room, and felt a pang of sadness. Having walked this path with Joe Ethan, I believed we were soulmates with shared aspirations. I believed our love was as successful and fulfilling as our careers. It turns out it was all a one-sided fantasy. From the very beginning, Joe Ethan's heart had always belonged to Lin Xia. I just don't understand why, if he couldn't forget Lin Xia, he chose to be with me. I'll always remember the day Joe Ethan confessed his feelings to me. We had just secured a small investment, and to celebrate, we sat by the sea, drinking under the moonlight. I don't hold my alcohol well, and after a few drinks, I felt dizzy. The summer sea breeze, mingled with the sound of the waves, made me feel drowsy. I lay on the sand with my eyes closed, feeling the gentle breath on my face. When I opened my eyes, Joe Ethan had gotten up without me noticing and was standing over me. His handsome eyes were misty with moisture, and his usually composed face was flushed with red. He said, "Ava, let's date." The sea breeze was gentle, and the waves danced joyfully. Joe Ethan's kiss had the salty taste of the sea, and I couldn't help but sink into it. Later, we often went on dates by the sea, and each time, Joe Ethan would find me the most beautiful seashell. There were so many that they now filled 3 glass jars. Looking at the glass jars by my side now, I felt both amused and mocked. I began to wonder, in every moment we were together, who was Joe Ethan really thinking about? I almost tortured myself by recalling every little detail of the past, then dismissing the emotions I remembered, telling myself that at that moment, he didn't love me. I waited for a long time in the new house, but Joe Ethan never came back. The phone by my side rang intermittently. Some calls were about confirming the wedding lights, others about choosing the wedding music, but none were from Joe Ethan. I stubbornly dialed his number over and over again, hoping for an answer, but no one picked up. It wasn't until the next day that I saw Joe Ethan's whereabouts in the news. The news reported on the murder of a Chinese woman in the U.S., and among the grieving family members, a fleeting image of Joe Ethan flashed by. It turned out that as soon as he heard the news, he had already rushed to the other side of the ocean. It seemed that the outcome I had wanted had already been decided, but I refused to acknowledge it. I began calling to cancel the wedding arrangements at the hotel and notify relatives that the wedding was off. Facing the concerned inquiries from family and friends one after another, my heart was torn apart with each explanation. It wasn't until late at night, after everything was settled, that I collapsed onto the bed, exhausted both mentally and physically, and fell asleep. I don't know how long I slept before being awakened by a thick cloud of smoke. I hurriedly put on my robe and ran downstairs, only to see a figure in the blazing flames below. Joe Ethan had returned at some point, holding a bottle of alcohol, drinking and spilling it as he muttered something mournfully. The smoke was too thick, and my nasal passages and throat burned painfully. I tried to call the police but realized I had left the phone on the first floor before falling asleep. "Lena! Lena! Why? Why? Without you, what's the point of all our efforts?" Joe Ethan's cries echoed from the first floor. In the flames, he was holding Lin Xiao's portrait and crying hoarsely. I felt my breathing growing more and more difficult. I desperately shouted Joe Ethan's name. But even in the last second before I lost consciousness, he didn't look back at me once. When I opened my eyes again, I was back in the university classroom. The sunlight streamed through the window, warming my face. The sound of pencils scratching against paper filled my ears, along with occasional whispers. The feeling of being on the brink of death was too vivid. The suffocating sensation from earlier still lingered. I opened my mouth wide and took deep breaths, as if I had just surfaced after drowning. The professor was lecturing on stage, but no one noticed my unusual behavior. It wasn't until a classmate kicked my chair from behind that I heard the professor shouting my name loudly. "Ava, Joe Ethan, Ava, Joe Ethan." The professor's final voice was filled with impatience, as if he was very dissatisfied with the two of us daydreaming. I reflexively stood up, and Joe Ethan, who was sitting in the back row, stood up with me. "The competition list is about to be submitted. Are you sure you want to add Lin Xia to your group?" The professor's gaze darted between me and Joe Ethan, as if he found the suggestion incomprehensible. After all, Joe Ethan had always been a top student in the class, and my grades were also among the best. On the other hand, Lin Xia had even failed her major courses. The professor couldn't understand why we wanted to add her to the team so close to the competition. However, before I could react, Joe Ethan suddenly woke up as if from a dream and threw himself onto the sleeping Lin Xia, crying loudly. "Lena, Lena, it's so good, it's so good." He hugged Lin Xia and spoke excitedly. Lin Xia was awakened from her sleep and felt a little impatient, but she gently tried to break free, only to be held tightly by Joe Ethan, who refused to let go. At that moment, I was certain I had been reborn, alongside Joe Ethan. A wave of intense hatred swept over me. Joe Ethan, what right did he have? After deceiving me for 5 years, he dragged me into a suicide pact for his beloved. I couldn't bear to think about how much pain my family would feel upon hearing of my death, or the child who had only existed for a little over a month, ultimately dying at Joe Ethan's hands. Joe Ethan's bizarre behavior was finally stopped by Professor. Enough! This is class. What are you doing, Joe Ethan? I'm asking about the competition roster. Joe Ethan seemed to finally calm down, and his handsome face quickly regained its composure. He stood up and bowed his head. I'm sorry, I just had a nightmare. Professor, please add Lin Xia to the roster. Professor, I want to withdraw from Joe Ethan and Lin Xia's group. Before Joe Ethan could finish speaking, I coldly interjected. Apparently caught off guard by my reaction, the professor said reproachfully, "What's going on here, Ava? You and Ethan are the best choice to represent our department in the competition. What do you mean by withdrawing now?" Joe Ethan looked at me for a moment, his expression momentarily blank, until Lin Xia tugged at his sleeve, looking dejected. He walked up to me and said condescendingly, "Ava, what do you mean? How can you change something that's already been decided?" What's been decided? That our team must include your girlfriend's name? What has she done to prepare for the competition? What role can she play in the competition? Why should I work hard for the result and then have to add Lin Xia's name? Unexpectedly, I said this, and he frowned in surprise. Lena's GPA is just a bit short. If she can get a good ranking in this competition, she can graduate smoothly. She won't affect us. How can you be so selfish? You won't even help a classmate. It's not even a small favor for you. Lin Xia may not have good grades, but she's pretty and good at socializing. At this moment, many classmates around us started speaking up for her. Exactly. Lin Xia isn't going to take your scholarship. As class president, can you really bear to let her fail to graduate? I never thought Ava would be so selfish. Listening to the voices around me, I sneered inwardly. It was the same in my previous life. Before the competition, Joe Ethan approached me to add Lin Xia, using almost the same words as they did today. Though I felt uneasy inside, I valued Joe Ethan's skills and, under his moral coercion, agreed to let Lin Xia join. We won first place, but during the speech, Joe Ethan mentioned Lin Xia in every sentence and didn't acknowledge my contributions at all. In the end, they were hailed as the divine couple of the computer science department, while my name was overshadowed by their glory. In this new life, I wouldn't be so foolish. I wouldn't let myself be a stepping stone. I'd rather kill him than help him. Everyone was waiting for me to cave in and speak up, as if refusing would make me a selfish villain. What was there to feel sorry about? Whether she graduated or not had nothing to do with me. Did I block her from studying? Did I make her sleep in class? I prepared for the competition for a month, staying up countless nights. Why should I bring her along? Before Joe Ethan could respond, I looked around and addressed the two classmates who had spoken earlier. You think I'm selfish for not helping? I remember your graduation project won a silver award. Why didn't you include Lin Xia's name? And you, weren't you sitting in front of Lin Xia during the final exam? Why didn't you let her copy your answers? The two people I called out both looked pale and didn't dare to speak. Finally, a classmate who couldn't stand it anymore whispered, "Exactly. Why does Lin Xia get to join just because she says so? Isn't that clearly taking advantage and being shameless?" Lin Xia's face gradually turned pale, and her big eyes filled with tears but refused to fall. Joe Ethan's face was as pale as water, looking at Lin Xia with pity in his eyes. However, before he could say anything, the professor interrupted the commotion. Ava, you've prepared for this competition for so long. Are you really going to give up? If you don't want to join Lin Xia, you don't have to. You and Ethan can continue as a team. I looked at the professor smiling calmly. No, I don't want to team up with Joe Ethan anymore. I have someone else in mind. Under everyone's gaze, I stood up and walked to the last row by the window, pulling up the teenager who was sleeping soundly on the desk, the only one who hadn't been disturbed by the earlier argument. His hood was pulled over his head, and he looked clearly annoyed when I woke him up. I pretended not to notice and smiled broadly, taking his hand and saying, Macy, let's work together. The teenager looked at me with clear eyes, a hint of confusion, but he didn't pull his hand away and said, okay, let's work together. Macy was an outcast in our class. He was always elusive, rarely seen, and when he did show up, he would sleep through the entire class. His grades were always at the bottom of the class. Now that I had chosen him over Lin Xia, it had made Zhou Ethan and Lin Xia so angry that their faces turned ashen. Zhou Ethan shot me a deep, contemptuous glance and whispered to Lin Xia, don't worry, Lena. I can get you the ranking on my own. I couldn't help but giggle. It turned out that in his own mind, he had never thought Lin Xia was useful either. Ignoring Professor's objections, I submitted the new application form. Everyone, including Zhou Ethan, thought I had lost my mind. Only the teenager in the back corner let a faint smile play on his lips. After class, I packed my things and ran out of the classroom, running so fast that my breath hurt. But I didn't want to stop. I had to go home, right away. Because at this time, my mother was still alive. In my previous life, my mother had died suddenly from a cerebral hemorrhage a year after I graduated. I hadn't even had the chance to see her one last time. At the time, I had thrown myself into my startup with Zhou Ethan and hadn't gone home for a long time. I hadn't even called her once in those days. After my mother passed away, my father fell seriously ill and was hospitalized. As a young adult, I was running back and forth between the hospital and home, handling my mother's funeral arrangements. It was during that time that Zhou Ethan, who was my business partner, acted like a family member, helping me with matters at home and in the hospital. He became my pillar of support during my most difficult and vulnerable moments. I still remember that a month after my mother passed away, my numb nerves finally began to feel pain. One day, while opening a box of kitchenware that had been sent by a bank when I applied for a credit card, I finally let out a loud cry. My mother loved kitchenware so much. If only she were still here. The pain of losing a loved one surged from my limbs to my chest, leaving me utterly defeated. Zhou Ethan stood there helplessly, patting my back and crying with me for the entire afternoon. I think that might have been the beginning of my feelings for him. I have imagined countless times going back in time to hug my mother tightly, buy her all sorts of beautiful kitchenware, and tell her to get regular health checkups. Now, that dream has come true. But as soon as I reached the entrance of the academic building, Zhou Ethan grabbed me and dragged me into the stairwell. He pressed me against the wall as I gasped for breath. I didn't want to get into a struggle with him, but I also feared he'd notice something was wrong and discover the truth about my rebirth. Zhou Ethan's eyes were dark, filled with emotions I couldn't understand. He leaned closer and said, "Why are you rejecting me? We could definitely win first place if we teamed up." I rolled my eyes at him and said, "What are you doing? I have things to do. I already made it clear earlier that I'm not interested in the competition." Zhou Ethan stared at my face, then his expression changed, and he said with certainty, "Are you jealous? Ava, do you like me? Did I do something to make you misunderstand? I've always considered you my best partner." Zhou Ethan's words made me feel sick to my stomach. Seeing his smug expression made me want to punch him in the face. Am I such a despicable person? Why are you being so disgusting to me? My disgust was unmasked, and Zhou Ethan froze in place. We were so close that I could feel his breath. I tried to break free, but he gripped my wrist tightly. His eyes were filled with disbelief, as if he was saying, "Ava isn't like this." Just then, a large hand rested on my shoulder. Macy's eyes peered out from under the hood of his sweatshirt. "Come here." He spoke as he prized Zhou Ethan's fingers apart one by one, then wrapped his arm around me and walked out of the stairwell without looking back. "Ava, I'm giving you another chance. Think carefully. Teaming up with him is tantamount to suicide." Zhou Ethan's shouts echoed behind us, but neither Macy nor I turned back. After walking a short distance, Macy suddenly bent down and leaned close to my face, examining me intently as if studying some creature. Finally, I couldn't help but ask, "Why me? Looking at his serious and troubled expression, I stammered, well, I once saw the code you wrote in an internet cafe and thought you must be pretty skilled. Macy continued to stare at me, then finally took off his hat, smiled slightly, and placed his large hand on my head, saying, "You have good taste." I exhaled deeply, relieved that he wasn't a heartless person. Actually, seeing him write code in the internet cafe was true, but that wasn't enough to make me want to team up with him. The real reason was that in a computer competition in my previous life, Joe Ethan and I had won first place, and Macy had come in second. He had just randomly picked a gaming partner to join the competition, so it was essentially him alone who achieved the second place result. However, he didn't show up for the award ceremony, and the name used for the competition was a pseudonym, Mason. The event was open to the public, and the rules were fairly lenient, so no one knew who the absent second-place winner Macy was, not even Joe Ethan. However, I happened to glance at that segment of code and recognized Macy. Moreover, this guy had already independently designed a software program before graduating and quickly dominated the market, becoming a legendary figure. Unfortunately, I later heard that he had moved abroad and disappeared from the public eye. After agreeing on a time to meet next, Macy and I hailed a taxi and rushed home. Since it was within the city limits and not too far away, the car arrived at the entrance of the residential complex in less than an hour. I had been eager to get there as quickly as possible, but once I arrived, I sat in the car for a long time, unable to get out. It wasn't until the driver urged me to get out that I finally got out of the car. As soon as I closed the car door, I heard a familiar voice behind me say, "Yeah? I knew it was you. Your dad said it wasn't you, but it's definitely you, right?" My mother's voice was filled with joy, but to me, it sounded like it had traveled through time. I turned around and couldn't stop the tears from flowing down my face. "Oh my dear daughter, what's wrong? Why are you crying? Oh Dad, come and see what's wrong." I threw myself into my mother's arms and held her tightly. My mother seemed a little startled by me, but she only gently patted my back and didn't try to break free. The familiar scent of pine on her body made me feel that she was truly alive. I stood at the entrance of the neighborhood, holding my mother, crying my heart out without caring about anything else. By the end, I could only sob, repeating over and over, "Mom, I miss you so much, I miss you so much." After returning home, I fell asleep in my mother's arms without realizing it. I heard her say, "Shoo, don't disturb her. Such a strong child crying like this, poor thing, what must she have gone through?" After waking up and eating the meal my mother had prepared, I finally felt a little at ease, but I couldn't bear to be separated from her for even a moment. The next day, I dragged my mother to the hospital for a checkup, and sure enough, she was diagnosed with high blood pressure, high blood sugar, and high cholesterol. After getting the medication, I reminded her to take it on time every day. I also used some information from my previous life to help her reorganize her finances. Though I didn't know if this would change the ultimate outcome, at least from now on, I would cherish every day with my family. From that day on, Joe Ethan never bothered me again, instead devoting himself entirely to Lin Xia. In the classroom, the cafeteria, and the dormitory building, their affectionate figures were everywhere. And unlike in my previous life, Joe Ethan began showering Lin Xia with luxury items. In my previous life, Lin Xia broke up with him and left the country because Joe Ethan's business ventures were doomed to fail and he couldn't meet her material demands. After Lin Xia left, Joe Ethan once cried while drunk, saying, "Lin Xia is just a materialistic woman. She said I couldn't give her what she wanted and that we never had a single good day together." It seems that this time, Joe Ethan has made thorough preparations to keep Lin Xia. Even the roommates have started discussing how Joe Ethan seems like a completely different person. Do you think love can really change someone? Ethan the genius used to be so aloof, but since he started dating Lin Xia, he's become the perfect boyfriend. Maybe. Didn't you see? Joe Ethan buys breakfast every day and waits for Lin Xia to wake up. Whatever she says, he does immediately. The other day, Lin Xia joked with her friends and told him to go pick water lilies at the artificial lake. He jumped in with a splash, and Lin Xiao's face turned green. Oh my god, that scene was so thrilling. Exactly. I heard that it was Lin Xia who chased after him at first. Love really does make people lose their minds. It's terrifying. I put on my headphones to block out my roommate's discussion. I don't care at all about what Joe Ethan did. The computer competition is less than 2 weeks away, and the results of this competition are crucial for securing funding for our startup. I've arranged to meet Macy in the study room to compile the data and make the final preparations for the competition. As for Macy, I didn't know much about him in my previous life. During university, he seemed like a non-entity, even dropping out in the end. Later, his short video app went viral, and I only learned about him through rumors. He was born abroad and returned to China with his parents at the age of 8. His parents were experts in molecular materials, but Macy was obsessed with video games from a young age, consistently underperforming until his parents gave up on him. However, he eventually secured admission to our university through a computer competition. After graduation, he started his own business with the software he designed and became a prodigy praised by everyone in the industry. When I arrived, Macy was sitting in the corner sound asleep. After waking him up, he opened his computer and showed me the problems he had prepared for the competition. It wasn't until that moment that I truly understood what it meant to be a genius and what the gap between us was. Seeing my stunned expression, he said casually, "After all, I don't want others to say that teaming up with me is like asking for trouble." As he spoke, he glanced meaningfully toward the back, and I noticed that Joe Ethan and Lin Xiao were also there. Joe Ethan was buried in his computer, deep in thought, while Lin Xiao wore headphones and scrolled through her phone, occasionally bursting into laughter that rang like a silver bell, drawing the attention of those around her. I refocused my gaze on Macy and said, "I chose you for my team because I've never been the type to act impulsively or give up easily. On the contrary, I have high hopes for you, not just for this competition." Seemingly taken aback by my serious attitude, Macy looked at me blankly for a moment. His skin was so pale it was almost transparent, his thin lips pursed, and a pair of dark pupils peered out from under his bangs. The sunlight filtering through the leaves fell on him, giving him a warm glow like melting snow. How did I not notice how good-looking this guy was in my previous life? Bang! A loud noise suddenly came from behind us, and Macy and I turned around at the same time to see Joe Ethan standing straight, the chair behind him knocked over on the ground due to his sudden movement. Lin Xia took off her headphones and said with a hint of complaint, "Joe Ethan, what's wrong with you? What are you doing?" However, Joe Ethan seemed oblivious to Lin Xiao's complaint, staring straight at me. His brows were furrowed, his eyes filled with unhidden anger, but when our gazes met, there was a fleeting look of hurt. I deliberately ignored the commotion behind me and, under Joe Ethan's gaze, pulled Macy to a quieter study room. On the day of the competition, I received a text message from Joe Ethan. "I'm definitely going to win first place, Ava. You'll regret this." I turned off my phone and sneered inwardly. We'll see who comes out on top. In the venue, each group of contestants was separated by small partitions for simple division. The names of the participants were displayed on a large screen in real time. Our seats were right next to Joe Ethan's. Before the competition began, he leaned over the partition and gave me a long, confident look, his face radiating the confidence of someone who believed he was about to win. The competition started, and Macy and I divided the problems and tackled them one by one. With our teamwork, we quickly solved one difficult problem after another, even faster than Joe Ethan and I had been in my previous life. When the time ran out and the bell signaling the end of the competition rang, I looked up and saw our names at the top of the big screen. I couldn't help but cheer and hug Macy. I felt the body I was hugging stiffen for a moment, and when I looked up, I saw a flush on Macy's cheek. In this competition, Macy and I came in first place, while Joe Ethan and Lin Xia didn't even make it into the top 10. Turning my head, I saw Joe Ethan staring blankly at the screen, muttering to himself, "Impossible, how did this happen? How did this happen?" Lin Xia, standing beside him, shook his arm impatiently and said, "Ethan, what's going on? Didn't you say we were sure to win? What about my credits?" Joe Ethan snapped out of his daze and turned around in shock, his eyes filled with disbelief. It seemed he had finally realized something. I turned around, took Maisie's hand, and walked out of the competition venue without looking back at him once. Lin Xia, seeing that Zhou Ethan wasn't responding, continued to complain incessantly. Finally, Zhou Ethan's impatient shout came from behind. Lin Xia, can you just let me be? You didn't help at all from start to finish. Is this result all my fault? The sound of their argument grew fainter. I looked at Maisie and said, "Thank you." He lowered his head, looking at me with some confusion. I smiled and said, "It's nothing. Thank you for not refusing when I randomly dragged you into the team, and thank you for helping me win. Want to celebrate?" I asked. Maisie hesitated for a moment, looking somewhat reluctant. I quickly said, "It's okay, go ahead if you have something to do. I'll leave first." After all, this god-tier player seems to sleep 23 hours a day, and today he's already exceeded his awake time limit. After bidding farewell to Maisie, I planned to take a taxi home, but just as I opened the car door, Zhou Ethan pulled me back from behind. "Yeah, is that you?" Yeah was the nickname he used to call me after we were together in our previous life. I looked at Zhou Ethan without saying a word. "It must be you, right?" The competition question was changed, and I knew it had to be you. And Maisie, if it wasn't you, how would she have teamed up with him? His words were all over the place, but I understood every word. I broke free from his grip and slapped him hard across the face. "Go get your head checked. Stop saying such nonsense." "What do you mean the question changed? Did you know it beforehand? And don't call me that name. We're not that close yet. Instead of bothering me, why don't you think about how to help your girlfriend get her credits?" I didn't know if my tone betrayed my emotions, but Zhou Ethan's eyes finally cleared after I slapped him. He gave a faint, defeated smile and said, "You're not her. She would never treat me like this." After Zhou Ethan left, my emotions remained turbulent for a long time. Memories of my past life flooded my mind, and I couldn't help but want to confront him about why he treated me that way, to tell him about the tragic outcome of my previous life. But what would that accomplish? A true scoundrel would never empathize with your pain. I didn't want to punish him by using my tragic ending to make him feel guilty and ashamed. What I wanted was to destroy him. I couldn't control myself, crouching on the spot, hugging my knees, trembling and crying out loud. Tears hit the ground and quickly spread out, like the pain spreading through my heart. Suddenly, a pair of shoes appeared before my eyes. I followed the shoes upward and saw Maisie's face hidden under his hood. He looked down at me, seeming a bit flustered, his breathing still irregular from rushing over. "I'm sorry," I said after a moment. "I really didn't know where to take a girl to celebrate, but if you have somewhere you want to go, we can go there." This was the first time Maisie had ever spoken such a long sentence. I blinked my red eyes at him and suddenly burst into laughter. "How about an internet cafe?" I asked. "Can we?" His expression brightened instantly, and his nervous eyes filled with joy. That day, Maisie took me to an internet cafe and played games all afternoon. I just followed him around while he went on a killing spree. On the way home, he asked me, "Are you feeling better?" I realized he had been concerned about my mood earlier, so I smiled and said, "Much better, thank you. I also have a business plan. Would you be interested?" In my previous life, I started a business with Zhou Ethan. Although the initial inspiration and plan were his, he mainly handled technical issues afterward, while I was responsible for most of the company's operations. Zhou Ethan was arrogant and didn't bother with investors, so it was always me who had to use all my courage and thick skin to negotiate for a little bit of benefit. Eventually, Zhou Ethan often said I had no backbone. Screw backbone, that doesn't help when it comes to securing investments. Recently, Zhou Ethan has been trying to win over Lin Xia for the competition, buying her designer bags, planning a European vacation, and even setting off a huge fireworks display on the school playground as an apology. His family isn't wealthy, and they're even a bit poor, which was the main reason Lin Xia left him in his previous life. This time, he's daring to spend so recklessly because he's planning to start another business, and with the experience from his previous life, he's confident he'll succeed quickly. Sure enough, Joe Ethan found me after class soon after. He sat down in the seat in front of me, turned around, and looked at me, saying, "Ava, I misunderstood you before. I have an idea I want to realize with you. You might find it strange, but trust me, if we work together, we can definitely succeed." I looked at him indifferently without responding. He handed me a business plan. The software I've developed will be launched within 3 years. By then, my company will grow rapidly and become a pillar industry in Qingmu City. I want you to be my partner. I believe in your abilities. Joe Ethan enthusiastically painted a picture of the future, while the classmates around him looked at him skeptically, but I knew he was telling the truth. I gathered my textbooks from the desk, carefully avoiding the proposal he had placed there, and said without looking up, "I'm not interested." Joe Ethan seemed taken aback by my blunt refusal and persisted, "Ava, I truly believe in you. This is the fastest path to success, there's no better option. If you can't hear me, go get your ears checked. If you can't understand what I'm saying, go learn how to speak properly." I picked up my backpack and turned to leave, but Ethan wasn't ready to give up. "Ava, what are you getting so upset about? You've always admired me, haven't you? You've always been in awe of my skills. Why are you pretending to reject me? Is it because my girlfriend is Lin Xia that you think you don't stand a chance, so you're giving up on yourself?" Clang! Before Joe Ethan could finish, I grabbed my laptop bag and smashed it on his head. "Joe Ethan, how dare you? I'm not interested in you, and I'm not interested in your plan. Can't you understand?" My voice was so loud it drew the attention of all the classmates in the classroom. Joe Ethan's forehead was cut open, and fresh blood stained the corners of his eyes. Lin Xia rushed over from behind and hugged Joe Ethan, turning to shout at me, "Ava, don't be ungrateful. Ethan's plan has already secured investment. If it weren't for the fact that you're a classmate, he wouldn't have dragged you into it." Joe Ethan was shocked that I dared to hit him. The once proud him was now the center of attention in the classroom, trembling with anger. "There's no point talking to her. I've done my part. Ava, from now on, we're done." Joe Ethan wrapped his arm around Lin Xia and walked away without looking back. A classmate who knew what had happened tried to console me, "Ava, I heard that Ethan the genius's business plan has several investors interested. I saw them discussing it at the school cafe the other day. Don't miss out on this opportunity." I pulled out my laptop and tossed the laptop bag into the trash can behind me. Just as I was about to speak, a pair of strong hands took the laptop from my arms. She wouldn't miss the opportunity, she was the opportunity. Miisi spoke softly, pulling me out of the classroom. "I don't know what kind of entanglement you have with Joe Ethan, but I've read the proposal you gave me, and I can do better, I mean in terms of programming algorithms." Maisi's technical skills far surpassed Joe Ethan's, but he had his own life path. It wouldn't be fair for him to change it because of me. I looked up at him and said, "You're also working on software, right? You can do it better yourself. There's no need to split your energy between us." After a brief silence, Maisi spoke up, "I don't know how you found out about what I'm doing, but that doesn't matter. I can indeed develop the software well on my own, but I know nothing about operations. I reviewed your proposal, and while there are some flaws in the programming algorithms, the rest is excellent. I am genuinely willing to collaborate with you, and it has nothing to do with Joe Ethan." Well, I guess this doesn't count as me luring a young man away from his family, does it? Maisi and I hit it off immediately and got to work urgently. I had to launch the software before Joe Ethan. Maisi and I contacted an investor who had rejected me in my previous life. In his previous life, he had said that the idea was good, but the programming needed improvement and wasn't enough to catch his eye. This time, after Maisi optimized the algorithm, it immediately caught the investor's attention. An elderly man in his 50s held Maisi's hand and said, "How wonderful. Young people are truly amazing. It wasn't until Macy looked at me for help that I made an excuse to leave and rescue her. With the remaining funds, things went smoothly thanks to my experience from my previous life. By the time our software was launched, Joe Ethan was still fixing bugs. In my previous life, Joe Ethan failed once before finally succeeding in entrepreneurship 2 years after graduation. This time, although he made progress much faster, he still lagged behind Macy and me. The same software was developed by us first, and his investor withdrew funding in anger, making Joe Ethan a laughingstock in the industry. At the graduation ceremony, Macy and I delivered speeches as outstanding graduates, while Joe Ethan sat below, staring at me with a complex expression. There was no sign of Lin Xia by his side. It was rumored that they were breaking up because of his failed startup. Additionally, the credit cards and online loans he had maxed out for Lin Xia were already suffocating him. At that moment, he finally confirmed that I had indeed been reborn. Yeah, why? Joe Ethan confronted me as expected. Since you're back, why would you rather start a business with that freak Macy than help me? This time, I didn't avoid his gaze. I looked him straight in the eyes and said, because I hate you. I wish I could kill you. Joe Ethan's eyes turned red, and he choked out, weren't you the one who came back to die for me after I died? I never thought you'd go this far for me. Commit suicide for you? It was you who committed suicide for Lin Xia, dragging me along to die with you, causing me to die twice. My emotions were too intense, and my voice was trembling. I couldn't believe the person in front of me could say such disgusting words, still trying to justify himself. How could you? It's impossible. Joe Ethan could no longer control himself, burying his head in his hands and collapsing onto the ground. I clearly received a message from a friend saying you canceled the wedding. I thought you hated me so much. Did you really wait for me in the wedding room all this time? As if finally realizing something, Joe Ethan burst into tears. Yeah, you're in the wedding room. How could you be in the wedding room? I was drunk. I don't remember anything. I'm sorry. It's all my fault. I'm sorry. Joe Ethan's head hit the ground repeatedly, tears and snot mixing together. I don't want to see you anymore, and Macy isn't a freak. I don't want to look at him again. I turned and left. The reckoning for past lives has only just begun. I won't play the game of starting over and pretending we never met. I hold grudges. As I walked past the corner of the stage, Macy was leaning against the wall with her eyes closed. Seeing him, I was a bit surprised, since Joe Ethan and I had been speaking quite loudly just moments ago. I'm sorry. I saw Joe Ethan looking for you and got worried. I didn't mean to eavesdrop. You must think this is absurd. Time travel is only in novels, after all. Macy shook his head and said with a hint of joy, now everything makes sense. I think it's reasonable. I've finally solved the mystery of who you are. I was stunned by Macy's calmness and stared at him in disbelief. Until he cleared his throat uncomfortably and said, humans have only explored less than 1% of this world. Who can say for sure that there aren't time travelers in the river of time? Ava, you're a miracle. Macy's eyes sparkled with excitement. She didn't treat me like a monster or an outsider, but instead called me a miracle. 3 days later, I saw Joe Ethan again. Graduates were leaving campus one after another, and the job market was nearing its end. A crowd had gathered in front of the dormitory building. Joe Ethan was holding on to Lin Xiao's luggage, refusing to let go. Lena, believe me, I can make it. I beg you, don't leave me. Joe Ethan desperately assured Lin Xia, but she seemed unconvinced. Enough, Joe Ethan. Why should I believe you? Because you make 800 collection calls a day? Or because you're listed as a dishonest debtor? I should have known you were this kind of person from the start. My parents have already arranged for me to study abroad. I'm leaving the country. Let's part ways amicably. Upon hearing the words study abroad, Joe Ethan's eyes widened in terror. He stammered, No, Lena, you can't go abroad. Give me a year, no, 6 months, I'll definitely turn things around. Apparently unwilling to waste any more words on him, Lin Xia threw aside the suitcase Joe Ethan was holding onto and shouted angrily, I don't want the suitcase anymore, okay? If you keep bothering me, I'll call the police. After saying that, Lin Xia turned to leave in her high heels, but just a few steps later, Joe Ethan rushed up from behind and grabbed her tightly. You can't go. You can't go. You'll die, Lena. You'll be shot. Lin Xia was startled and screamed, but no matter how she struggled, she couldn't break free from Joe Ethan's arms. You're crazy. I can't breathe. Lin Xia's face turned red from being choked by Joe Ethan, and she was about to suffocate when the classmates finally pulled Joe Ethan away. The commotion between Joe Ethan and Lin Xia ended with the police being called. When the police arrived, Joe Ethan was being held down by the classmates and was still screaming with his eyes wide open, while Lin Xia was being protected by several female classmates and was barely able to stand. The police were unfazed, as breakups were common during graduation season, and there had even been a recent incident where someone threatened to jump off a building. Lin Xia was being held by a policewoman, sitting on the side of the road, breathing heavily. Her eyes darted around nervously. I'm about to study abroad, and my ex-boyfriend suddenly stopped me and said some random things. I'm so scared. Joe Ethan finally calmed down and admitted to the police that he had acted impulsively, promising never to do it again. He had been willing to kill himself for Lin Xia, and after being reborn, he had showered her with love, but in the end, he couldn't change the outcome of his previous life. Joe Ethan's eyes were filled with despair and resentment. When he saw me in the crowd, he finally collapsed and sat down, covering his face and crying. After the police left, Lin Xia was surrounded by her two best friends and went to the academic building. Apparently, she was terrified and waiting for her family to pick her up. I needed to go to the professor's office to get some materials. On my way back, I passed by the study room and overheard Lin Xia and her friends talking. Lena, are you okay? Joe Ethan was so scary just now. He scared me to death. I never realized he was a madman. Isn't college romance just for fun? He actually took it seriously. Plus, he's in debt up to his ears, and he still wants to stop me from going abroad. He's a madman. I shouldn't have gotten involved with him. Lena, you mustn't let him find out about your foreign boyfriend. I feel like Joe Ethan is capable of murder. Don't worry, I'll go back with him, and Joe Ethan won't see us again. I didn't want to listen anymore, but as I turned the corner, I saw Joe Ethan. He must have calmed down and wanted to apologize to Lin Xia, but he overheard her talking about cheating on him. Joe Ethan looked up and saw me, panicking and trying to avoid my gaze. His expression was gloomy, and his fists were clenched tightly, trembling slightly. I didn't care to watch his misery. After all, he had brought this upon himself. As I walked past him without looking, I heard him mumble, I was wrong. I was completely wrong. Lin Xia left the country as she had planned. Apparently, Joe Ethan didn't bother her anymore, but instead kept showing up around me. My favorite snack street, my favorite coffee shop, and the beach where I would go for a walk when I was in a bad mood. He even came to my house. When I got home that day, I opened the door and found Joe Ethan sitting on my sofa, chatting happily with my parents. Auntie, Ava said that your noodles with sauce are the best. I was craving them the other day. Joe Ethan looked at my mom with teary eyes. Recently, since his house was far away, he often came to my house for meals, and his favorite dish was my mom's stir-fried noodles. Oh, that's nothing special. Stay for dinner today. Look at this handsome young man. Why hasn't Yaya ever mentioned him before? My mom turned to me and said, hurry up, Yaya, your classmate is here. You two talk, I'll go cook. My parents smiled and went to the kitchen to prepare, while I stood in the living room, coldly staring at Joe Ethan without saying a word. Yeah, I just wanted to come see Auntie and remind her to go for a checkup. After all, you were so upset after she passed away in my previous life. Joe Ethan's words were sincere and emotional, but I found them utterly repulsive. I picked up the gift box he had brought and threw it out the door. Watching Joe Ethan rise awkwardly, I said coldly. Are you afraid of my pain? Do you know the pain of a groom running away on the eve of his wedding? Do you know the pain of being burned alive while pregnant? Yeah, I didn't know. I really didn't know. I was drunk. I really didn't know you were upstairs. If I had known. What would have happened? Drag me out and set myself on fire? Joe Ethan, from the moment you abandoned me for Lin Xia, you've never been able to wash away your guilt. I'm warning you, if you dare show your face to my family again, I won't let you off. I've heard your creditors are hunting you down all over the city. I ignored his explanations and pushed him out the door. Hey, where's Xiao Zhou? Isn't he supposed to be eating here? My mom came out of the kitchen holding a plate and asked. I chased him away. What? You're so impolite. He's a deadbeat debtor who owes a mountain of money and was detained a few days ago. He came here to ask you for money. My words cut off my mother's scolding. She stood there dumbfounded, holding the plate, and finally said, "Oh, then we should keep our distance from him." I also exaggerated Joe Ethan's ridiculous deeds to my parents, ensuring that the next time they saw him, they would run away without looking back. My company with Macy was gradually getting on track. The software he had developed in his previous life was also being released one after another, and as the company expanded, we needed to continuously recruit talent. Just when I thought Joe Ethan had finally stopped bothering me, I unexpectedly saw him again during an interview. He was wearing a black suit, but the material was so cheap it looked out of place. His black-rimmed glasses couldn't hide the dark circles under his eyes, and the once neatly groomed man now had stubble on his face. When he saw me sit down, his eyes lit up. He answered all the interviewer's questions excellently, as if the confident young man from the past had reappeared. Just as the interviewer was about to offer him the position, I stood up, threw his resume into the trash bin, and carefully wiped my fingers with a tissue. Facing the shocked stares of everyone present, I said, "This company is not a trash bin. From now on, when hiring, we will not only assess technical skills but also review other aspects of an employee's background, such as those who are deeply in debt or morally corrupt individuals." Joe Ethan looked at me with reddened eyes and said softly, Yeah, I know no amount of apologies can earn your forgiveness, but I truly want to help you. You know my capabilities, I don't want anything else. I just want to be by your side, even if it's to atone for my sins. Please give me a chance. I didn't want to argue with him anymore and turned to call security. Unexpectedly, Joe Ethan leaped up and pressed a utility knife against my neck. Yeah, believe me. I still have a few software programs I'm working on, all of which are our previous products. I can definitely help you. Joe Ethan's face flushed red from excitement, and his gaze fixed on me with a hint of madness. He was holding me tightly, and I couldn't break free. So I looked into his eyes and said, "Have you ever thought about why the software you designed can't find an investor, even if you try to sell it?" Joe Ethan flinched at my words, his wide eyes staring at me in disbelief. "It's you? It's actually you. Why are you doing this to me? I already told you I didn't mean it. I don't care about Lin Xiao's life anymore. I only want you. You're mine, I said it. You can only be mine, for all eternity." Joe Ethan grew more and more agitated, clutching my hands tighter and tighter. Amidst the commotion, Joe Ethan was suddenly knocked to the ground. Macy, who had just returned from meeting a client, shielded me behind her. Joe Ethan glared at us resentfully and said, "Do you think Ava likes you? She loves me. In the past life, it was me, and now it's still me. I was the one who made a mistake and made her angry. Otherwise, with your freakish appearance, you don't even deserve to stand by her side. She's mine. She's mine." Macy took my hand and looked at Joe Ethan, saying, "Ava doesn't belong to anyone. She is her own person. Perhaps she once loved you, but your actions don't deserve her love anymore. Get out of here. I've already called the police." As Joe Ethan was being taken away by security, he shouted, "Ava, you told him everything? That was our secret. Why did you tell an outsider? I didn't respond, only feeling the warmth of Maisie's tightly clasped hand. I used every means at my disposal to send Joe Ethan to prison, where he was sentenced to 2 years for attempted assault. A year later, news came from abroad that Lin Xia had died, though this time in a car accident rather than by gunshot. I had someone deliver the news to Maisie. I heard that upon hearing it, he cried and laughed, muttering about reincarnation and time travel. He has since begun receiving mental health treatment. I watched my mother carefully, and fortunately, she did not suddenly fall ill and die like she did in the previous life. It seems that in this world, some things cannot be changed, while others can. Joe Ethan ultimately couldn't keep Lin Xia, but I kept my mother. Maisie and I grew our company larger and larger. At a business dinner where he rarely drank, Maisie drank all of my alcohol and got completely drunk. On the way home, he hugged me and said, "Ava, I'm always afraid you'll suddenly disappear. I don't want to lose you." I replied half-heartedly, "No, I'll always be with Mr. Mason," while dragging him toward the house. In truth, over the years, I wasn't entirely unaware of Maisie's feelings, but I just couldn't bring myself to take that step. Once bitten by a snake, one fears even a rope. Though this wasn't fair to Maisie, I had done my best to maintain our relationship at a relatively normal level. And Maisie, very much in sync, never crossed any boundaries, like the perfect partner, always by my side. Except today. I dragged him to the bed and tried to unbutton his shirt to help him breathe easier. But he suddenly pulled me down, his eyes meeting mine. "Ava, can I love you?" In the darkness, Maisie's eyes shone brightly, staring straight at me as if trying to see through my heart. Before I could answer, his lips met mine, cool and tentative, trembling with suppressed emotion. Without thinking, I kissed him back. The next morning, I woke up exhausted, but Maisie was nowhere to be found. This guy, did he run away? I got up, put on my clothes, and opened the bedroom door, only to hear Maisie talking on the phone to someone. What should I do? She won't forgive me. How could I take advantage of her while she was drunk? Did you book the ticket? Yes, Berlin, the earliest flight. Hearing Berlin, my heart skipped a beat. In my previous life, Maisie had disappeared after going to Berlin, and some even speculated that she had been silenced as a hacker. I wrapped my arms around Maisie's waist from behind, pressing my head against his back and said, "What? You don't want to admit it and run away?" Feeling the body in my arms stiffen, Maisie turned around and looked at me in surprise. The sudden turn of events made me a bit flustered, but the serious look Ethan gave me last week still warmed my heart. "I'm not drunk." I tiptoed up and kissed him gently on the lips. After a brief moment of stiffness, he responded with even more passion, until both of us were breathing heavily, and the kiss ended. Later, I asked him why he was going to Germany. Maisie squinted his eyes and said, "It's not me, it's my friend. If you don't make me leave, I won't go." "All right, then you can't leave, especially not to Germany." Facing my nonsensical words, Maisie simply smiled and nodded. I rested my head on his knee, and through the strands of his bangs, I saw my reflection in his eyes. In this lifetime, I want to be brave once more.